Picture this, a tense Atlanta courtroom packed to the brim as Tamika Lawrence, a sharp 28-year-old black woman, faces a judge in her million-dollar lawsuit against corrupt cops. Everyone assumes she's about to lose, crushed by the city's lies. Then boom, she drops a bomb. She's a federal agent undercover, exposing police corruption. Gasps echo, but her evidence is gone, and they call her a fraud. Her life's now a tightrope, teetering on ruin. What's her next move? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's episode will leave you speechless. Tamika Lawrence adjusted her apron behind the counter of Brew Haven, a cramped coffee shop nestled on Peachtree Street in Atlanta's roughest patch. The air smelled of roasted beans and sweat, thick with the clamor of clinking mugs and muttered conversations. At 28, she blended in seamlessly, her quick smile and deft hands masking her true purpose. She wasn't just a barista pouring lattes for minimum wage. She was an undercover federal agent, eyes sharp, tracking a precinct that bled black-owned businesses dry with extortion rackets. For months, she'd watched, listened, and waited, her mission simmering beneath the surface of every foamed cappuccino she served. The shop's owner, Mr. Jarvis, a wiry man with graying temples, trusted her implicitly, often joking she'd be running the place if he ever retired. She liked him, his quiet resilience a mirror to her own, though he had no clue who she really was. Outside, the summer sun baked the cracked sidewalks, pushing the temperature past 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity clung like a second skin. It was one of those afternoons where the heat seemed to stir trouble, and trouble didn't take long to walk through the door. Around 2 o'clock, the bell above the entrance jangled harshly, cutting through the low hum of the shop. 2 uniformed cops strode in, their boots thudding against the scuffed linoleum. Officer Grant Keller, a broad-shouldered man with a buzzed scalp and a sneer that could curdle milk, led the way. Behind him trailed Officer Dwayne Polk, taller, leaner, with a lazy swagger and eyes that darted like a predator sizing up prey. Tamika's pulse quickened, but her face stayed neutral as she wiped down the espresso machine. She'd seen them before, prowling the neighborhood, shaking down vendors and store owners under the guise of protection. Today their target was Brew Haven, and she knew this wasn't a coffee run. Keller planted himself at the counter, his meaty hands splayed across the scratched wood, while Polk lingered near the door, blocking the exit with casual menace. Mr. Jarvis emerged from the back, wiping flour from his hands, his apron dusted white from prepping scones. His smile faltered when he saw them, replaced by a tight-lipped wariness Tamika had come to recognize as survival instinct. "Afternoon, Jarvis," Keller drawled, his voice dripping with false cheer. "Rent's due. You know how it works. $200 cash, or we start finding health code violations. Your choice." Mr. Jarvis stiffened, his jaw clenching as he glanced at the handful of customers sipping drinks at wobbly tables. "I paid last week," he said, voice low but firm. "You can't keep coming back like this." Polk chuckled, a dry grating sound, and stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You hear that, Grant? Old man thinks he's got rights." Keller's grin widened, but his eyes turned cold like a snake coiling to strike. "Rights don't mean squat if we say they don't. Pay up or this dump gets shut down. Maybe we'll toss in an assault charge for fun. You black folks always think you can push back." The racial jab landed hard, and Tamika felt heat flare. She in her chest, but she kept her head down, pretending to scrub a stubborn stain. She couldn't blow her cover, not yet. Mr. Jarvis reached for his wallet, hands trembling slightly, but Tamika couldn't let it slide. She'd spent weeks documenting their crimes, and this was her chance to catch them raw. "Excuse me," she said, stepping forward, her tone polite but edged with steel. "You're on camera. The shop's got security. You sure you want to do this here?" She tapped her apron pocket subtly where her phone rested, already recording. Audio through a discreet app. The lie about the shop's cameras was a gamble, but it made Keller pause, his thick brows knitting together. Polk's gaze snapped to her, narrowing as he took in her neat braids and steady stare. "Who's this mouthy chick?" he muttered, crossing his arms. Keller leaned over the counter, close enough that she could smell the stale tobacco on his breath. You work here, girl. Mind your business or you'll regret it. Tamika held his stare, heart pounding but voice calm. Just saying, folks are watching. Might not look good later. For a moment silence stretched taut, the air crackling with unspoken threats. Then Keller's hand shot out, snatching her apron pocket before she could react. He yanked the phone. Free? Its screen glowing with the recording app still active. Well, look at this, he said, holding it up triumphantly. Little spy thinks she's slick. Polk stepped forward, smirking as he grabbed the device from Keller's grip. What's this, huh? Evidence? You stealing from the till, sweetheart? Tamika lunged to grab it back, but Keller shoved her hard against the counter, her hips slamming into the edge with a jolt of pain. Back off, he snarled, while Polk raised the phone high and smashed it onto the floor, stomping it until the screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. Customers gasped, some scrambling for the door, but Mr. Jarvis shouted, "Leave her." Alone, Keller rounded on him, jabbing a finger into his chest. "Shut it, or you're next." Tamika's mind raced, adrenaline surging as she calculated her next move. The phone was toast, but she had a backup recorder stitched into her jacket lining. A tiny device she'd rigged for emergencies. She needed to get it safe, needed to get out before this escalated further. "I didn't steal anything," she said, hands raised, playing the scared worker to de-escalate. "Just let me go. I won't say a word." Keller's lip curled, his ego bruised by her defiance. "Oh, you'll talk when we're done with you." Polk cracked his knuckles, stepping closer, but Tamika saw her opening. She bolted past him, ducking under his outstretched arm, and darted for the back exit. "Get her!" Keller roared, and the two cops barreled after her, knocking over chairs as Mr. Jarvis yelled in protest. She burst into the alley behind the shop, the stench of garbage and motor oil hitting her like a wall. Her sneakers slapped wet pavement as she sprinted, weaving between overflowing dumpsters and rusted fire escapes. The cops were close, their heavy footsteps echoing, their curses bouncing off the brick walls. "Stop, you little rat!" Polk shouted, his voice laced with venom. Tamika's chest burned, her legs pumping as she rounded a corner, spotting a crowded intersection ahead. If she could blend into the foot traffic, she might lose them. She risked a glance back, saw Keller's red face twisted with rage. Polk, gaining ground with his longer stride. Her hand brushed the jacket lining, feeling the reassuring bump of the backup recorder. This was her lifeline, her proof, and she couldn't let them take it. She hit the intersection just as a wave of pedestrians surged across Peachtree Street, horns blaring from stalled cars. Tamika slipped into the throng, pulling her hood up to shield her face, her breath ragged but controlled. She wove through the crowd past a street vendor hawking roasted peanuts, a group of teens laughing over their phones, a businessman barking into a headset. The cops burst onto the scene seconds later, scanning furiously. But she kept moving, her dark jacket melting into the sea of bodies. Keller shoved a bystander aside, barking, "Where'd she go?" Polk spun in a circle, fists clenched, his frustration palpable. Tamika ducked into a bodega's doorway, pressing herself flat against the glass, watching as they stormed past, their voices fading into the city's din. Her heart thudded against her ribs, sweat beading on her forehead as she caught her breath. She'd escaped, barely, and the recorder was still hers. She slipped a hand into the lining, fingers brushing the cool metal, relief flooding her for a fleeting moment. Those two weren't just bullies. They were predators, and they'd marked her now. She replayed Keller's threat in her mind. Make her pay. It wasn't an idle promise. She'd poked a hornet's nest and the sting was coming, bigger and uglier than she'd anticipated. Back at Brew Haven, Mr. Jarvis would be left to face their wrath alone, and guilt gnawed at her for that. But this was bigger than one shop, bigger than one day. She straightened, resolve hardening like steel in her spine. She'd get the recording to her handler, Agent Reese, and they'd build a case to bury these clowns. Tamika stepped out of the bodega, blending back into the crowd, her mind already plotting the next move. She didn't see the unmarked car idling. 2 blocks away, its tinted windows hiding a pair of eyes that had tracked her escape. Keller and Polk weren't done with her, not by a long shot, and someone higher up was already pulling strings to tighten the trap. The afternoon sun dipped lower, casting jagged shadows across Peachtree Street, and Tamika walked on, unaware that her first real battle had just begun, a spark about to ignite a firestorm she couldn't yet fathom. Tamika Lawrence slumped onto a rickety bench in a dimly lit MARTA station, the rumble of an approaching train vibrating through her bones. Her jacket hung heavy with the backup recorder, its tiny weight a lifeline after the chaos at Brew Haven. She'd slipped away from Officers Keller and Polk, their racist threats still ringing in her ears. But her pulse hadn't settled. What kind of city let cops prey on its own people like that? She pulled her hood tighter, scanning the platform for any sign of pursuit. The air stank of diesel and stale popcorn, a late afternoon crowd shuffling past, oblivious to the storm, brewing in her life. She dodged a bullet, sure, but how long could she keep running on luck? Her fingers brushed the recorder, and a flicker of hope sparked. She'd get this to Agent Reese, her handler, a gruff ex-Marine who'd promised to back her up. Together, they'd nail those corrupt pigs to the wall. She fished a burner phone from her pocket, one she'd stashed for emergencies, and dialed Reese's secure line. The call crackled to life after 2 rings. "Tamika, you okay?" His voice was gravelly, laced with concern. She exhaled, leaning against the bench's cold metal. "Barely. Keller and Polk hit Brew Haven today. Shook down Jarvis, smashed my phone when I recorded it. I've got a backup, though. Audio of them demanding, Cash throwing slurs like it's nothing." Reese grunted, the sound of papers rustling on his end. "Good work, that's gold. Get it to me tonight. Safe drop at the old warehouse on Auburn Avenue. I'll push it to internal affairs fast. Those clowns won't know what hit 'em." Tamika nodded to herself, a tight smile tugging at her lips. "On it. See you at 8. She hung up, the plan locking into place. Could this really be the break she'd been chasing for months? The drop went smooth as silk. She slipped the recorder into a rusted mailbox outside the warehouse, its brick facade crumbling under years of neglect. Reese texted confirmation an hour later. "Got it. IA's on deck. Lay low." Tamika crashed at a cheap motel off Interstate. 20. The kind with flickering neon signs and stained carpets, her body buzzing with adrenaline but her mind easing. She pictured Keller and Polk squirming when the feds came knocking, their smug faces crumpling under the weight of her evidence. Was this what victory felt like? She drifted into a restless sleep, dreaming of a courtroom where justice wasn't just a word but a hammer smashing down on corruption. For the first time in weeks, she believed she'd outsmarted them, that her mission might actually succeed. That illusion shattered at 3 in the morning. A thunderous crash jolted her awake, the motel door splintering inward as flashlights sliced through the dark. "Hands up now!" a voice bellowed, and Tamika's heart lurched into her throat. She scrambled upright, blinking against the blinding beams, as 6 cops stormed the room, guns drawn. Keller and Polk led the pack, but a new figure loomed behind. Them, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a captain's badge glinting on his chest. Harrove, the precinct's top dog, his reputation as ruthless as the streets he controlled. What was he doing here? Keller yanked her off the bed, slamming her against the wall, her shoulder cracking painfully against the plaster. "Thought you'd play hero, huh?" he snarled, his breath hot on her face. Polk rifled through her bag, pulling out a handful of jewelry and electronics she'd never seen before. "Look what we found," he said, dangling a gold chain with a grin. "Stolen goods from 3 stores on Peachtree. You're done, thief." Tamika's mind spun, panic clawing at her chest. "That's not mine. You planted it," she shouted. But Harrove stepped forward, his voice a low rumble that silenced the room. "Shut your mouth. We've got witnesses, footage, the works. You're under arrest for burglary, and if you squirm, we'll add resisting." His pale eyes bored into her, cold and unyielding, a predator savoring the kill. She twisted against Keller's grip, desperation surging. How had they turned this around so fast? The recorder was with Reese. Safe, wasn't it? Harrove leaned closer, his bulk filling her vision. "You think you're smart, crossing us. I run this precinct, this city. You're nothing but a black rat in my trap." The racial venom in his words hit like a punch, and she realized this wasn't just about her. It was personal, a message to anyone who dared defy their system. They cuffed her wrists tight enough to bruise, the metal biting into her skin as they dragged her outside. The motel parking lot glowed red and blue from squad car lights, a small crowd of bleary-eyed guests whispering behind their curtains. Polk shoved her into the back of a cruiser, her head banging against the frame, and she bit back a cry. "Where's your little recording now?" he taunted, slamming the door. Tamika's stomach dropped. Did they know about the drop? Had Reese sold her out? The car lurched forward, speeding toward the precinct, and she fought to steady her breathing. She'd given Reese everything, trusted him to escalate it. If he'd gone dark, she was alone, framed, and headed for a cell. But why would he abandon her now? At the station, they hauled her into a grimy interrogation room, the walls stained yellow from years of cigarette smoke. Harrove sat across from her, flipping through a file with exaggerated calm, while Keller and Polk flanked the door, cracking their knuckles like they were itching to use them. "Here's the deal," Harrove said, tossing a photo of the planted jewelry onto the table. "You confess, we go easy, maybe 6 months, fight it, and you're looking at 10 years. Your kind doesn't win against us." Tamika glared, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "I'm not confessing to your lies. Check the shop footage. I was working all day." Hargrove's lips twitched into a smirk. "Funny thing about footage. It disappears when I say it does." He slid another photo forward, a grainy still of her at Brewhaven, time-stamped hours after the alleged thefts. "This says you weren't." Her breath caught. They doctored it, shifted the timeline to bury her alibi. How deep did this corruption run? She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. "You won't get away with this. People saw me escape you today. They'll talk." Harrove laughed, a guttural sound that chilled her. "People, those nobodies on Peachtree, they're too scared to squeak. And your little friend Jarvis, he's already coughing up extra to keep his shop standing." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "You've got no one. Reese ain't coming either. He knows better than to cross me." The mention of Reese hit like a sledgehammer. Was her handler really gone? Or was Harrove bluffing? She couldn't tell, but the room felt smaller, the air thinner, as the weight of betrayal settled in. They booked her, fingerprints smudging ink onto her hands, her mugshot snapped under, harsh fluorescent lights. Keller sneered as he shoved her into a holding cell, the bars clanging shut with a finality that echoed in her skull. "Sleep tight, princess. Court's gonna love you." She sank onto the cot, the thin mattress reeking of mildew, and stared at the ceiling, mind racing. She'd thought the recording was her ace, her ticket to tearing down their empire. Now, she was locked up, evidence planted and Reese's silence deafening. Had she misjudged everything? The precinct buzzed beyond the bars, officers laughing, phones ringing, a machine she couldn't stop from inside. But she wasn't broken, not yet. She'd find a way, claw her way out, even if it meant playing their game smarter, dirtier, hours. Later, a public defender slid a plea deal through the slot. 5 years if she signed now. She tore it up, the pieces fluttering to the concrete floor. Harrove wanted her to bend, to prove his power over her, over every black face he crushed under his boot. She wouldn't give him that win. But as the night stretched on, doubts crept. And what if Reese had flipped? What if the recorder was destroyed? She hugged her knees, the cold seeping into her bones, and vowed to fight, even if she had to do it alone. Little did she know Harrove was already tightening the screws, his next move poised to crush her fragile hope into dust. Drop a comment with the number 1 if you think Tamika's got the guts to beat these crooked cops. Hit like if you're rooting for her to turn the tables, and subscribe because this fight's only getting wilder. Ever wonder how far someone can push back when the system's rigged against them? Stick around to find out what hits her next. Can she claw her way out of this frame-up, or is Hargrove's grip too tight to break? Tamika Lawrence stepped out of the precinct into the muggy Atlanta dawn, her wrists still raw from the cuffs. She'd made bail, scraped together by a sympathetic bondsman who'd heard whispers of her arrest, but freedom felt like a mirage. The sky hung heavy with grey clouds, a storm brewing over Peachtree Street, and her sneakers scuffed the pavement as she headed back to Brewhaven. She needed her job, needed normalcy, even if the weight of Hargrove's frame-up pressed down, like a vice. Could she really walk in there after everything? Her jacket still hid the torn lining where the recorder once sat, a hollow reminder of her lost edge. She rounded the corner, expecting the familiar hum of the coffee shop, but froze when she saw the chaos waiting for her. News vans lined the block, their satellite dishes piercing the sky, cables snaking across the sidewalk like tripwires. A swarm of reporters jostled for position, cameras flashing, microphones thrusting forward, while a crowd of onlookers gawked from behind a flimsy police tape. Tamika's stomach lurched. What was this? She edged closer, catching snippets of chatter. Caught red-handed. Burglary suspect. Disgrace to the neighborhood. Then she saw it, plastered across a news van's screen. A grainy video of her at Brew Haven, slipping a necklace into her apron pocket. Time-stamped. The day of the thefts. Her breath stopped. That never happened. Hargrove's crew had doctored it, twisted her defiance into a lie, and now it was everywhere, branding her a thief in bold red letters scrolling beneath her face. She pushed through the throng, head down, but a reporter spotted her, a wiry guy with a nasal voice. "Tamika Lawrence, care to comment on the footage? How long have you been stealing from local businesses?" The crowd turned, a wave of accusing eyes pinning her in place. She opened her mouth to deny it, but another voice cut through, sharp and familiar. "She's a liar and a crook." Officer Keller stood by the shop's entrance, arms crossed, his smirk wide enough to split his face. Polk flanked him, twirling, a baton, his lazy grin daring her to step closer. Tamika's fists clenched, heat flooding her cheeks. How had they spun this so fast? She scanned the crowd, spotting Mr. Jarvis inside Brew Haven, his silhouette hunched behind the counter. She needed to explain, to salvage something, anything. She ducked under the tape, ignoring the cameras, and slipped into the shop. The bell jangled, a weak echo in the tense silence. Mr. Jarvis looked up, his eyes bloodshot, flour smudging his apron like war paint. "Tamika," he said, voice cracking. "What's going on?" "They're saying you robbed stores, that you're why the cops keep coming." She stepped forward, hands raised. "It's not true. They planted that stuff, faked the video. You saw them yesterday, shaking you down. They're covering their tracks." He rubbed his temples, glancing at the news crews outside. "I want to believe you, but it's killing my business. Customers are scared off. I can't have this heat." Her heart sank. Was he turning on her too? "Mr. Jarvis, please, I'm fighting them. I just need time." He shook his head, slow and heavy. "I'm sorry, Tamika, you're fired. I can't risk it." The words hit like a slap, sharp and stinging. She'd lost her cover, her income, her ally, all in one blow. She nodded, throat tight, and turned to leave. But Keller's voice boomed through the open door. "Leaving so soon, thief? Tell 'em how you preyed on good folks." He stepped inside, Polk trailing, their boots thudding like war drums. The few remaining customers scattered, chairs scraping, as Keller loomed closer. "You black trash. Think you can strut around here taking what's ours? We own this street." Polk chuckled, leaning against the counter. "Should have stayed in your place, girl. Now everyone knows what you are." Tamika's blood boiled, her cover teetering, on the edge of collapse. Could she shut them up without exposing her mission? She squared her shoulders, voice low but cutting. "You're the ones robbing people. I've got nothing to hide." Keller's eyes narrowed, a flicker of rage breaking his smug mask. "Big. Talk for a jailbird. We've got you on tape and the whole city's watching." He jabbed a finger at the window where cameras zoomed in, capturing every word. Polk stepped closer, his baton tapping his palm. "Keep mouthing off and we'll drag you back downtown. Maybe rough you up a little first. Teach you some respect." The racial undertone dripped from his tone, thick and deliberate, a taunt, meant to break her. Tamika's nails dug into her palms, her training screaming to stay calm, but her fury roared louder. Should she call their bluff, risk everything right here? She took a breath, forcing control. "You'll slip up eventually. Truth always comes out." Keller laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the walls. "Truth? We are the truth. Keep dreaming, sweetheart." He turned to the crowd outside, raising his voice. "See this? She's why your shops get hit. Lock her up." Cheers erupted, mixed with jeers, a chorus of hate swallowing her denial. Polk smirked, twirling his baton faster. "Run along now, we'll be watching." Tamika backed toward the door, the air thick with their victory, her humiliation complete. She stepped outside, cameras flashing like gunfire, reporters shouting questions she couldn't answer. "Are you guilty, Tamika? Why target black businesses?" Each word twisted the knife deeper, and she pushed through, head high, but soul battered. She made it 2 blocks before the first insult hit. A guy in a trucker hat spat at her feet, snarling, "Thieving scum." A woman with a stroller muttered, "Should have known," loud enough to sting. Tamika kept walking, the weight of their stares crushing her resolve. How could they believe this so easily? The video played on a loop in her mind, a fake she couldn't unsee, her own face betraying her to a city she'd sworn to protect. She reached a bus stop, collapsing onto the bench, her breath ragged. Hargrove's reach was suffocating, turning neighbors into enemies with a single lie. She checked her burner phone, hoping for Reese, but the screen stayed blank. Was he really gone or just biding his time? The storm broke overhead, rain pounding the pavement in sheets, soaking her through. She shivered, pulling her jacket tighter, the empty lining a cruel joke. Brew Haven was gone, her cover blown to pieces, and the public's scorn felt like a brand seared into her skin. Keller and Polk had won this round, painting her as the villain while they strutted free, but why stop at framing her? She replayed Hargrove's smirk, his calm control in that motel raid. This wasn't just revenge, it was a power play, a warning to anyone who dared cross his empire. She'd nearly exposed them, and now they'd buried her under their narrative. Tamika stood, rain streaming down her face, and started walking. She couldn't go home, not with cops probably staking it out. She needed a plan, a way to flip this nightmare back on them. The footage was fake, but she'd seen their real crimes, heard their slurs, felt their fists. Could she gather more? Proof without Reese. She slipped into an alley, the rain masking her steps, and leaned against a brick wall, catching her breath. She'd almost blown her cover back there, almost shouted she was a Fed just to wipe those smirks off their faces. Good thing she hadn't. That card was her last play, and she'd hold it close until the moment was right. But as she stood there, soaked and alone, a new sound cut through the downpour. Tires screeching, a van pulling up at the alley's mouth. She tensed, peering through the rain, and saw Keller's silhouette in the driver's seat, Polk beside him. They hadn't followed her. They'd known she'd come this way. How? Her heart raced as Keller stepped out, rain plastering his uniform, his grin feral. "Told you we'd be watching," he called, voice carrying over the storm. Polk cracked, his knuckles advancing slow and deliberate. Tamika backed deeper into the alley, her mind screaming one truth. This was far from over, and Hargrove's next move was already in motion, ready to drown her in a flood she couldn't outrun. Tamika Lawrence sprinted through the rain-slicked alley, her sneakers splashing in puddles as Keller and Polk's van roared behind her. The downpour blurred her vision, but she didn't stop, her pulse hammering in her ears. She'd barely escaped. Their taunts at Brew Haven, the public's jeers still burning in her mind, and now they were hunting her like prey. She darted left, cutting through a narrow gap between buildings, the bricks scraping her jacket as she squeezed through. The van's headlights flashed past, missing her by inches, and she pressed herself flat against the wall, breath held tight. Were they ever going to let up? She waited until their engine faded, then slipped out, her clothes drenched, her resolve fraying but intact. She couldn't fight them alone, not like this. She needed help, someone to amplify the truth before Hargrove's lies buried her completely. She trekked 3 miles on foot, sticking to back streets, until she reached a crumbling row house in West End, Atlanta. Jamal Carter lived there, a wiry activist with a megaphone voice and a knack for rallying crowds. She'd met him months ago at a community meeting, his passion for justice matching her own, though he didn't know her as a Fed. She knocked, rain dripping from her hood, and he answered, his brow furrowing at her soaked state. "Tamika, what's wrong?" She stepped inside, the warmth of his cluttered living room a stark contrast to the storm outside. "I'm in deep," she said, voice low. "Cops framed me, faked a video, they're ruining me out there." She pulled a USB from her jacket, a copy of the backup audio she'd stashed before the motel raid. "This is them, extorting Brew Haven. Real proof. Can you get it out?" Jamal's eyes lit up, a fighter's gleam cutting through his concern. "Hell yes, this is dynamite. We'll blast it online, get the streets talking. Those pigs won't know what hit 'em." He plugged the USB into his laptop, the audio crackling to life. Keller's growl demanding cash, Polk's slurs slicing. Through the static, Tamika's chest loosened slightly. Could this turn the tide? Jamal uploaded it to his activist channel, tagging every local group he knew, and within hours, it went viral. Views climbed past 10,000, comments flooding in. "Cops are trash! Justice for Tamika!" She watched from his couch, a flicker of hope igniting. Protesters gathered outside the precinct by dusk, 50 strong, chanting her name under flickering streetlights. Keller and Polk vanished from their usual patrol, and Tamika dared to think she'd struck a blow. She crashed on Jamal's couch that night, the rain tapping a steady rhythm against the windows. He brewed coffee, the rich scent filling the cramped space, and grinned over his mug. "You've got 'em rattled, girl. This could be the start of something big." She nodded, exhaustion tugging at her limbs. Was this what winning felt like? She imagined Harrove squirming, his empire cracking under the pressure of a pissed-off city. The audio was undeniable, her voice clear as she'd called them out at Brewhaven. She drifted off, dreaming of a reckoning, their badges stripped, her name cleared. But hope's a fragile thing, and Harrove wasn't the type to flinch at a little noise. She jolted awake at midnight, a crash shattering the quiet. Glass exploded inward, the front window raining shards across the floor as a Molotov cocktail tumbled through, flames licking the rug. "Jamal!" she yelled, scrambling up, but he was already on his feet, eyes wide with panic. "Out the back!" he shouted, grabbing his laptop. They bolted for the kitchen, smoke thickening fast, the roar of fire chasing them. Outside, tires squealed, and Tamika glimpsed 3 masked figures in hoodies piling into a black SUV. Hargrove's work, no doubt. How did he know she was here? They stumbled into the yard, coughing as the house blazed, orange tongues swallowing the roof. Jamal clutched the laptop, but his car parked out front erupted next, a second fireball lighting the night. "No!" he screamed, dropping to his knees. Before Tamika could process, a fist slammed into her back, knocking her forward. She hit the grass, pain spiking through her ribs, and rolled to see one of the thugs looming over Jamal. He swung a bat, cracking it against Jamal's skull with a sickening thud. "Stay down, loudmouth," the guy growled, his voice muffled by a ski mask. Tamika lunged, tackling him, her training kicking in as she drove her elbow into his throat. He choked, stumbling back, but another grabbed her from behind, wrenching her arms until her shoulders screamed. "Tell your friend to shut it," he hissed, then slammed her face first into the dirt. She tasted blood, vision swimming, as the third thug kicked Jamal's limp form. Were they going to kill him? The SUV's horn blared, and the attackers bolted, leaving Jamal crumpled and the house a furnace. Tamika crawled to him, her hands shaking as she checked his pulse. Weak, but there. "Hang on," she whispered, fumbling for her burner phone. Sirens wailed in the distance, drawn by the flames, but dread coiled tighter in her gut. This wasn't random, it was a message, Hargrove's retaliation for her defiance. Paramedics arrived, hauling Jamal onto a stretcher, his face swollen, blood matting his dreads. Cops followed, and Tamika tensed as Keller and Polk stepped from a cruiser, their grins feral. "Well, well," Keller said, surveying the wreckage. "Looks like you've been busy, Lawrence." Polk crouched beside her, voice low. "Arson and assault. Bad night for you." She spat blood onto the grass, glaring up. "You did this. You sent them." Keller laughed, loud and hollow. "Prove it, sweetheart. Oh, wait, your little recording burned up with the car." He nodded at the charred husk. The USB's backup likely melted inside. Tamika's stomach dropped. Had she lost it all again? Polk pulled out cuffs, snapping them on her wrists. "Witnesses saw a woman matching your description fleeing the scene. You're under arrest again." She twisted, fury surging. "Jamal's dying because of you." Keller shrugged, hauling her up. "He shouldn't have stuck his nose in our business. Neither should you." They shoved her into the cruiser, the door slamming shut like a coffin lid. At the precinct, they tossed her into a cell, the same mildewed cot from before mocking her return. A TV blared in the hall, a news anchor spinning the attack. Local. Activist brutally beaten. Suspect Tamika Lawrence tied to earlier thefts. Hargrove's voice followed, calm and smug in an interview clip. "She's a danger to our community. We'll ensure justice is served." Tamika sank against the bars, her hope snuffed out like Jamal's car. Was he even alive? The audio, her lifeline, was gone, and now she faced an arson rap, a warrant chasing her heels. She'd thought the protest was her win, a crack in there, armor, but Hargrove had flipped it, smashing her glimmer of light with a vengeance that left her reeling. She paced the cell, mind racing despite the ache in her ribs. The thugs had been too precise, too fast. Someone had tracked her to Jamal's, someone with eyes everywhere. Was it Reese, finally showing his hand? Or had Hargrove tapped her phone, her moves? She couldn't trust anyone now, not with Jamal. Down and the city turning against her. Keller and Polk strutted past, Polk tapping the bars with his baton. "Night-night, Firebug, court's gonna eat you alive." She glared, silent, her resolve hardening. They'd taken her evidence, her ally, her freedom, but not her fight. She'd escape this somehow, even if it meant running from shadows she couldn't see. Post a comment with the number 1 if you think Tamika's been betrayed by someone close. Hit like if you're furious at Hargrove's dirty tricks, and subscribe, because this roller coaster's climbing higher. Can she bounce back from this brutal hit, or is she too deep in the hole? Imagine losing everything in one night. What would you do next? Stay tuned to see how she claws her way out, or if Hargrove's got an even nastier surprise waiting. Tamika Lawrence crouched in the shadows of her cell, the precinct's hum a dull roar beyond the bars. Her wrists ached from the cuffs, her ribs throbbed from the beating at Jamal's, and the stench of mildew clung to her like a second skin. Hargrove's frame-up had her pinned for arson and assault, Jamal's blood on her hands in the public's eyes, but she wasn't staying caged. She'd heard the guards chatter, their shift change at 2 a.m., a sliver of chaos she could exploit. She'd lost the audio, her job, her ally, but not her training. Could she really pull this off? She fished a bent paperclip from the cot's frame, a trick from her undercover days, and worked it into the lock, her fingers steady despite the pain. The click was soft, almost lost in the night's drone, but the door swung open, and she slipped, out, a ghost in the dark. She moved fast, hugging the walls, her sneakers silent on the concrete. The precinct buzzed with late-night paperwork, officers distracted by coffee and complaints. She snagged a janitor's cap from a closet, pulling it low over her braids, and darted past a break room where Keller's laugh grated through the air. Was he celebrating her downfall already? She hit the back exit, a fire door propped open by a brick, and stepped into the cool Atlanta night. The city sprawled before her, a maze of lights and danger. But freedom tasted sharp, even if it was fleeting. She needed a hideout, a way to regroup, and she knew just the spot. A rundown motel off Interstate 85, a cash-only dive where questions stayed unasked. The trek took an hour, her hoodie up, her pace brisk but casual, blending into the stragglers on the streets. She paid $30 for a room, the clerk barely glancing up from his phone, and locked the door behind her. The space reeked of stale cigarettes, the bed sagging under peeling wallpaper, but it was hers for now. She sank onto the mattress, her burner phone dead, Reese still a ghost. How had Hargrove flipped everything so fast? She needed evidence, something to fight back, and her mind churned with a reckless plan. The precinct had digital files, a ledger she'd glimpsed during a recon months ago, linking Keller, Polk, and Hargrove to their extortion ring. If she could hack it, she'd have them cold. She rummaged through her jacket, finding a USB stick with a cracking tool she'd kept from her Fed kit, and headed out at dawn, hitching a ride to a library 6 miles away. The place was quiet, just a few students hunched over books, and she claimed a computer in the back, her cap still low. She'd swiped credentials from a rookie cop during a sting last year, a long shot that might still work. Her fingers flew over the keys, sweat beading on her neck as she breached the precinct's network. Was this insane? The firewall buckled, and she was in, scrolling through folders until she hit pay dirt, a spreadsheet titled Collections, dates and dollar amounts tied to black-owned shops, initials GK, DP, and H staring back at her. Keller, Polk, Hargrove. Her heart raced. Could this be the kill shot? She downloaded it, the USB humming as the file transferred. her eyes darting to the library's entrance. Every creak made her flinch, every shadow a threat. The ledger was a gold mine, proof of their racket stretching back years, enough to bury them if she could get it out. She ejected the stick, pocketing it, and logged off, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She'd leak it to the feds, bypass Reese entirely, and watch Hargrove's empire crumble. She stepped outside, the morning sun harsh against her tired eyes, and started back to the motel, a rare smile tugging at her lips. Had she finally outmaneuvered them? She crossed a busy intersection, lost in the thought of Keller's face when the cuffs came for him, when the ground shook. A black SUV screeched to a stop beside her, tires smoking, and she froze. Windows rolled down, and masked faces peered out, but she bolted before they could move, sprinting down a side street. Her lungs burned, the USB a hot coal in her pocket, as boots pounded behind her. How did they find her? She zigzagged through alleys, past graffiti-smeared walls and overflowing bins, but the roar of engines closed in. She risked a glance back, saw 4 figures in tactical gear, Hargrove's private muscle, not precinct grunts. They'd tracked her somehow, and now they wanted blood. She ducked into a parking lot, hiding behind a rusted pickup, but headlights flooded the space, pinning her like a spotlight. "Tamika Lawrence," a voice boomed, amplified by a megaphone. "Surrender now or we light you up." She peeked out, saw the motel in the distance, her room's window dark. The SUV rolled closer, and she spotted Hargrove himself in the passenger seat, his bald head gleaming, his smirk a blade. He'd sniffed her out, but how? A SWAT team piled out, rifles raised, their boots crunching gravel as they fanned across the lot. She'd hacked their system. Had they hacked hers back? She crouched lower, heart slamming against her ribs, and weighed her odds. Fight, and she'd die. Run, and she might make it. She chose the latter, bursting from cover as bullets cracked. The air. She dove behind a dumpster, lead pinging off metal, and scrambled toward the motel's rear. A window loomed ahead, cracked but intact, and she smashed it with her elbow, glass biting into her skin as she climbed through. She landed in a laundry room, dryers humming, and stumbled to her feet, blood trickling down her arm. The USB was still there, her lifeline, but the walls shook as boots breached the front. "She's inside!" Polk's voice echoed, gleeful and close. Tamika bolted down a hall, past peeling doors, and hit the back exit, bursting into daylight as sirens wailed. She sprinted across a field, weeds snagging her jeans, and dove into a ditch as the SWAT team poured out, rifles sweeping her chest. Heaved mud caking her hands as she watched them fan out. Hargrove barking orders from the motel stoop. "Find her, or you're all done," he roared, his voice a thunderclap. She'd slipped them barely, but her laptop sat in the room abandoned, its screen still glowing with the precinct's login. She cursed under her breath. Had they seen it? The USB burned in her pocket, her only win, and she clutched it tight, crawling deeper into the ditch. Bullets had missed her by inches, her hideout now a war zone, and Hargrove's rage meant he'd never stop. She'd thought the ledger was her trump card, a clean strike to end this, but they'd turned it into a hunt, her victory snatched before. She could taste it. She waited, the sun climbing higher until the team retreated, their curses fading into the wind. She climbed out, soaked in sweat and grime, and staggered toward the highway, thumb out for a ride. A trucker picked her up, no questions asked, and dropped her near a gas station 10 miles south. She bought her water with her last $5, gulping it down as she hid behind a pump, her mind spinning. The ledger was hers, but Hargrove's reach was a noose tightening fast. How had he known her every step? She replayed the hack, the library, the motel, searching for the leak. Reese's silence gnawed at her, a shadow she couldn't shake. Was he dead or worse on their payroll? She found a payphone, its receiver sticky with gum, and dialed a Fed hotline she'd memorized, leaving a coded tip about the ledger. "Check. Drop Point Delta urgent," she rasped, hanging up before they could trace her. She'd get it to them somehow, but she needed a new hole to crawl into first. Hargrove's SWAT raid had shattered her illusion of control, his power deeper than she'd feared. And now she was a fugitive twice over, the USB her only weapon. She started walking, the highway stretching endless before her, each step a defiance of the trap closing in. But as dusk fell, a chopper's blades thumped overhead, its spotlight cutting through the twilight, and she knew her run was far from over. Tamika Lawrence trudged along the shoulder of Interstate 85, the chopper's spotlight sweeping past her, its roar fading into the dusk. She dodged Hargrove's SWAT team at the motel, the USB with the precinct's ledger still tucked. In her pocket, a fragile victory in a war she was losing fast. Her clothes clung to her, caked with mud and sweat, her arm stinging from the glass cuts. She needed a lifeline, someone she could trust, and her mind landed on Lena Brooks, a college friend turned journalist with a scrappy online outlet. Could Lena amplify the ledger's truth? Tamika hitched a ride to Midtown Atlanta, the trucker, dropping her near a gas station, where she splashed water on her face, scrubbing away the grime. She found a payphone, dialed Lena's number from memory, and waited, each ring a prayer. Tamika. Lena's voice crackled through, warm but wary. "You sound like hell. Where are you?" Tamika leaned against the booth, exhaustion seeping into her bones. "I'm a mess, Lena. Cops framed me, torched my friend's place, shot up a motel. I've got proof they're dirty, a ledger of their extortion. Can you publish it?" Silence. Stretched. Then Lena exhaled. "That's huge. Meet me at Piedmont Park by the lake 1 hour. I'll bring my recorder. We'll blow this wide open." Tamika's chest loosened, a flicker of relief cutting through the dread. Was this her shot to turn the tide? She thanked Lena, hung up, and caught a bus, her cap pulled low, blending into the evening crowd. Piedmont Park buzzed with late joggers and dog walkers, the lake reflecting the city's skyline in shimmering streaks. Tamika spotted Lena on a bench, her short curls catching the breeze, a notebook in her lap. She looked nervous, her eyes darting, but Tamika chalked it up to the story's weight. She slid beside her, keeping her voice low. "Hey, thanks. For this. Here's the USB, everything's on it, names, dates, cash from black shops. Hargrove's running it all." Lena took the stick, her fingers trembling slightly as she plugged it into her laptop. The ledger glowed on the screen, stark and damning, and Lena whistled. "This is insane. I'll run it tonight, front page. You're a hero, Tamika." Could it really be that easy? Tamika smiled, faint but real, imagining Keller's rage when the headline dropped. They talked strategy, Lena scribbling notes, her questions sharp and eager. "How'd you get this? Who's Hargrove's muscle?" Tamika answered, keeping her Fed status buried, her trust in Lena solid as ever. But something felt off. Lena kept glancing over Tamika's shoulder, her foot tapping a restless rhythm. Was she just edgy or hiding something? Tamika brushed it aside, focusing on the plan. Leak the ledger, spark outrage, force the feds to act. She leaned back, the lake's calm lulling her, when a shadow moved in her peripheral vision. She turned, too late, as Keller and Polk stepped. From the trees, guns drawn, their grins feral in the park's dim light. "Gotcha," Keller said, his voice a blade. Tamika's heart stopped, her hand flying to the empty pocket where the USB had been. Lena clutched it now, standing, her face pale but resolute. "Lena, what the hell?" Tamika choked, lunging for her, but Polk grabbed her arms, twisting them back until pain shot through her shoulders. Keller loomed closer, his breath sour. "With tobacco. Your pal sold you out, $5,000, and she flipped like a switch." Lena wouldn't meet her eyes, staring at the ground, her notebook tumbling into the grass. "I'm sorry, Tamika," she mumbled. "They threatened my family. I had no choice." No choice. Tamika's fury erupted, betrayal cutting deeper than the cuffs ever could. How could Lena do this? Keller snatched the USB from Lena's hand, holding it up like a trophy. "This little toy's done causing trouble." He crushed it under his boot, grinding it into the dirt, the plastic cracking like Tamika's hope. Polk tightened his grip, his knuckles popping. "You've been a pain, girl. Time to pay." Before she could react, Keller's fist slammed into her jaw, a burst of white-hot pain knocking her head back. She tasted blood, her knees buckling, but Polk held her up, laughing low. "Not so tough now, huh?" They dragged her toward the quay. Lake, bystanders scattering, some pulling phones, filming from a safe distance. Was this how it ended, beaten in plain sight? Tamika struggled, kicking at Polk's shins, but he slammed her against a tree, bark scraping her cheek. "Keep fighting and we'll dump you in the water," he hissed, his gun pressing into her ribs. Keller leaned in, his voice a venomous whisper. "Harrove says hi. You're a dead woman walking." Blood trickled from her lip, her vision swimming, but she glared back, defiance burning through the haze. "You'll fall, all of you." Keller's fist reared again, cracking across her temple, and she crumpled, the world tilting as Polk let her drop. Grass met her face, wet and cold, and she heard Lena sob, "I didn't mean it," before footsteps retreated. She lay there, dazed, as the park emptied, the videos already hitting social media. Sirens wailed in the distance, but she knew better than to wait. Harrove would spin this, pin the assault on her, call it a botched arrest. She crawled to her knees, pain lancing through her skull, and staggered upright, the lake's edge glinting. Nearby, Lena's betrayal stung worse than the blows, a knife in her back she hadn't seen coming. How had Harrove gotten to her so fast? She wiped blood from her chin, her mind racing despite the fog. The USB was gone, her evidence dust. But she'd memorized the ledger's key lines, dates, amounts, initials. Could she still use that? She stumbled out of the park, her hoodie torn, her cap lost in the scuffle. A cab slowed, the driver eyeing her warily, but she waved him off, needing distance on foot. She hit a side street, weaving through late night. Crowds, every honk and shout jangling her nerves. Lena's face flashed in her mind, her excuses a hollow echo. $5,000 to sell out a friend, to hand Tamika to monsters. Was that all loyalty cost? She found a diner, slipping into a booth at the back, her reflection in the window a bruised mess. Swollen jaw, split lip, a cut above her eye. The waitress brought coffee, no questions, and Tamika sipped it, the heat grounding her. Her burner. Phone was long dead. Reese a phantom and now Lena a traitor. Hargrove's reach was a web, snaring everyone she touched, and she'd underestimated its strands. The precinct would be buzzing, Keller and Polk gloating, Harrove plotting her next fall. She'd thought the ledger was her win, a clean strike, to expose them, but they'd turned it into a trap, her ally's knife the sharpest cut. She traced the table's edge, her resolve hardening through the pain. She'd hit back somehow, even if it meant going darker, riskier. But as she sat there, blood drying on her skin, a TV above the counter flickered to life, a news anchor's voice cutting through. Tamika Lawrence, suspect in activist beating, now linked to park assault. Hargrove's spin, already rolling, and she knew the next blow was coming, bigger, deadlier, unstoppable. Drop a comment with the number 1. If you think Lena's excuse holds water, hit like if you're raging at her betrayal, and subscribe because this story's twists are just heating up. Could you forgive a friend who sold you out under pressure? Picture Tamika's next move. What's left when trust burns to ash? Stay locked in to see how she fights back, or if Hargrove's got a knockout punch ready to drop. Tamika Lawrence slipped out of the diner, the news anchor's voice still echoing in her skull, branding her a thug across Atlanta's airwaves. Her jaw throbbed from Keller's punch, her ribs ached from Polk's grip, and Lena's betrayal burned hotter than the bruises. She'd lost the USB, her evidence crushed under Keller's boot, but the ledger's details danced in her memory, dates, amounts, initials tying Hargrove's crew to their extortion empire. Could she still use that? She needed hard proof, something. They couldn't smash or spin, and she knew where to find it, the precinct's evidence locker, a vault of their dirty secrets. It was an insane risk, but she was out of options, a fugitive with nothing left to lose. She pulled her torn hoodie tighter, the night air biting her cuts, and started moving, her plan taking shape with every step. She hitched a ride to a pawn shop near the precinct, trading her last $10 for a cheap flashlight and a lockpick set, tools from her Fed training she hadn't touched in months. The precinct loomed 3 blocks away, a squat brick fortress glowing under sodium lights, its parking lot alive with late-shift cruisers. She scoped it from an alley, her breath fogging in the chill, counting patrols. 2 guards at the front, one circling the back every 15 minutes. Could she really breach this beast? She'd infiltrated tighter spots undercover, but never this desperate, never this alone. She waited for the back guard to pass, then darted across, her sneakers, silent on the asphalt, and reached a side door. Its lock rusted but sturdy. The pick clicked into place, her hands steady despite the adrenaline, and she was in. The precinct's stale air hitting her like a wall. She crept through a service hall, past humming vending machines and a janitor's closet reeking of bleach, her flashlight a thin beam cutting the dark. Voices drifted from the bullpen, officers laughing over coffee, but the evidence locker sat deeper, basement level, locked tight. She found the stairs, descending into a concrete maze, the air growing damp and heavy. The locker door loomed ahead, a steel slab with a keypad and a card reader, more secure than she'd hoped. How had she thought this would work? She pulled a stolen keycard from her jacket, lifted off a drunk cop months ago, and swiped it, praying it still held juice. The light blinked green, the lock buzzed, and she slipped inside, her heart slamming against her ribs. The room stretched long and narrow, shelves packed with bags, boxes, and files. The precinct's underbelly laid bare. She swept the flashlight, hunting for anything tied to Hargrove's racket, her pulse racing as minutes ticked by. Then she saw it. A hard drive labeled Market St. Ops, dated 6 months back. A sting she'd heard rumors about, shut down fast. Could this be it? She grabbed it, her fingers brushing a stack of cash envelopes beside it, marked with familiar initials, GK, DP, H. Her breath caught. This was gold, unedited footage of their crimes, maybe even Brewhaven's shakedown. She stuffed it into her waistband, the way to promise, and turned to bolt, but footsteps echoed above, heavy and deliberate. She killed the flashlight, ducking behind a shelf as the door creaked open. Polk's voice slithered through, lazy but sharp. "Told you. I heard something." Keller followed, his bulk filling the frame, a radio crackling at his hip. Probably rats. Check it anyway. Tamika's stomach twisted. Had they seen her on a camera? She held still, the hard drive digging into her skin as their boots clomped closer, flashlights slicing the shadows. Polk's beam grazed her shelf, missing her by inches, and she bit her lip, tasting blood from Lena's beating. "Nothing here," he muttered, turning away, but Keller paused, sniffing the air like a hound. "Wait, smells like sweat." She cursed silently. Her run had left her ripe. Would they sniff her out? They circled, Keller kicking a box, Polk tapping his baton against metal, the sound grating her nerves. She edged toward the door, slow and low, her training screaming to stay put, but her gut pushing her out. She reached the threshold, the hall, beyond dark and empty, and slipped through as Keller's light swung back. "Clear," he grunted, and they trudged out, the door locking behind them. Tamika exhaled, trembling, and bolted up the stairs, hitting the side exit as an alarm shrieked. Red lights flashing overhead. Someone had tripped a sensor. Her luck was crumbling fast. She sprinted into the night, the hard drive her lifeline, her mind racing with the next step. Leak it, end them. She found a dive bar 5 miles out, its neon sign buzzing open, and slipped inside, the stink of beer and smoke a cloak. A payphone hung in the corner, grimy but working, and she dialed a national news tip line, her voice hoarse but steady. "The anonymous source, Atlanta precinct corruption. Check drop point Bravo hard drive with proof, extortion on black businesses, move fast." She hung up, then hitched to a drop spot near the Chattahoochee River, a rusted mailbox she'd used in training, and stashed the drive, praying it reached the right hands. Back at a new motel, she watched TV, her cuts cleaned with sink water, and saw it break at dawn. Breaking news. Alleged police corruption exposed. The hard drive's footage aired, Keller's face sneering as he took cash, Polk's slurs, clear as day. Her chest swelled. Had she done it? The story exploded, protests flaring outside the precinct, signs reading, "Justice now." Hargrove's name trended online, his empire wobbling, and Tamika dared to hope. She'd struck back, turned their game against them, and the feds would have to dig now. She sank onto the bed, exhaustion pulling her under, when the TV cut to a new headline, "Local shopkeeper murdered, suspect Tamika Lawrence wanted." Her blood ran cold. The screen showed a photo of Mr. Jarvis, throat slit, Brewhaven's counter smeared red, time-stamped hours ago. Hargrove's voice followed, calm and chilling. "She's a violent criminal. We'll bring her in." Tamika's hands shook. They'd killed him, pinned it on her, a brutal counterpunch to her leak. She stood pacing the tiny room, the walls closing in. The footage was out, undeniable, but Harrove had flipped it again, framing her as a murderer to drown. The truth. How had he moved so fast? She replayed the locker break-in, the alarm, the news drop. They'd known she'd strike, waited to hit harder. The hard drive aired, but minutes later it vanished from broadcasts, replaced by Jarvis's corpse and her mugshot, the narrative shifting. Rogue thief turned killer. Her stomach churned. Mr. Jarvis, kind and steady, dead because she'd pushed back. Guilt clawed at her, but rage burned hotter. Could she prove this too? She grabbed her jacket, the motel's hum a distant buzz, and slipped out, a plan forming. Through the haze, she hit a gas station using her last coins for a coffee, its bitterness grounding her. Hargrove's reach was a hydra, every head she cut spawning two more. And now she was Atlanta's most wanted. Her counterattack twisted into a noose. Keller and Polk would be gloating, Harrove orchestrating from his throne. But she wasn't. Done? She'd memorized the footage, could testify to its truth if she survived long enough. The clerk eyed her, recognition flickering, and she ducked out, the night swallowing her again. She needed a new hideout, a new angle, but as she crossed the lot, a cruiser rolled up, silent and slow, its lights off. Polk's grin flashed through the window, and she knew her desperate gamble had just lit a bigger fuse. Tamika Lawrence bolted from the gas station, Polk's cruiser peeling out behind her, its tires screeching on the wet pavement. The night air stung her cuts, her legs pumping as she darted across the lot, the murder rap on Mr. Jarvis afresh, wound in her gut. She'd leaked the hard drive, exposed Hargrove's racket, but they'd countered with a corpse and her name, twisting her desperate strike into a death sentence. She veered into a wooded strip near the Chattahoochee River, branches snapping underfoot, her breath ragged in the dark. Could she outrun them this time? The river glinted ahead, a silver ribbon through the trees, and she aimed for an abandoned warehouse she'd scouted months ago, its rusted shell a last-ditch hideout. She slipped inside, the air thick with dust and rot, and pressed against a wall, her chest heaving as headlights swept the lot outside. Polk's voice barked orders, sharp and gleeful, but she had a plan. Agent Diaz, a rogue fed she'd met on a sting last year, off the grid and hungry to bust corruption. She'd stashed a burner phone in the warehouse, taped under a crate, and fished it out, her fingers trembling as she dialed his number. "Diaz, it's Tamika. I'm pinned, framed for murder. Got a hard drive out, but they're killing witnesses. Can you get me clear?" His gravelly voice crackled back. "Where? You at? I'll smuggle you south, hard drive too. We'll burn 'em." She gave the location, relief spiking through her fear. Was this her lifeline? She waited, crouched behind a stack of moldy pallets, the river's hum a faint pulse beyond the walls. Headlights faded, then flared again, closer, and she peeked. Out, spotting Diaz's beat-up sedan rolling up, its engine a low growl. He stepped out, lean and grizzled. A duffel slung over his shoulder and waved her over. "Move, Lawrence, clock's ticking." She sprinted to him, the hard drive digging into her waistband, and slid into the passenger seat, the leather cracked and warm. "Thanks, Diaz. Feds need this yesterday." He nodded, pulling onto a dirt track, the warehouse shrinking in the rear view. Could she finally breathe? She leaned back, exhaustion tugging at her, when the night exploded, a black Humvee. Rammed their rear, metal crunching as Diaz swerved, cursing loud. "Ambush," he yelled, flooring it, but floodlights blazed from the trees, blinding her. Armed figures in tactical gear poured out, Hargrove's private militia, their rifles glinting as they opened fire. Bullets shredded the sedan's tires, glass shattering inward, and Diaz grunted, blood blooming on his shoulder. "Get out," he roared, drawing a pistol, but a round caught his chest and he slumped, the wheels spinning free. Tamika kicked her door open, tumbling into the dirt as the car fishtailed into a ditch, flames licking its hood. How had they known? She scrambled up, the hard drive still hers, and ran, bullets kicking up soil around her. The militia closed in, boots thundering, their shouts a chaotic blur. "There she is. Take her alive." She zigzagged, lungs burning, and dove behind a fallen log, her hands clawing mud as she caught her breath. Diaz's sedan blazed 50 yards back, his body limp, a sacrifice she couldn't unsee. Was he dead because of her? She peeked out, saw Harrove himself step from the Humvee, his bald head shining under the lights, his voice booming. "Lawrence, you're done! Give up or we paint this river red!" His calm fury chilled her, a predator savoring the endgame. She clutched the hard drive, her mind racing. Surrender meant death, running meant a slim chance, but they were everywhere. Shadows tightening the net. A soldier flanked her left, rifle raised, and she rolled right, sprinting for the warehouse's rear, its broken doors a faint hope. Bullets whizzed past, one grazing her calf, pain searing up her leg as she stumbled. Inside, she barricaded the entrance with a rusted barrel, her hands slick with sweat and blood. But boots crashed through the front, splintering wood. "She's here!" Polk's laugh rang out, and Keller's silhouette loomed, gun drawn. Had she trapped herself? They fanned out, flashlights slicing the dark, and Tamika ducked into a side room, its floor littered with broken glass. She pressed against a wall, the hard drive a hot weight, her only leverage if she could hide it. But Hargrove's voice cut through, close now. "You've got nowhere left, Lawrence. Come out or we drag you out." She heard Polk kick debris, Keller's boots crunching nearer, and her heart sank. She'd called Diaz, trusted him, and now he was gone, her escape torched. How had Harrove tracked her again? She slid the hard drive under a loose floorboard, her fingers trembling, when Keller burst in, his flashlight blinding her. "Found you," he snarled, lunging. She dodged, swinging a pipe from the floor. But he caught it, wrenching her arm until it popped, pain exploding white-hot. Polk piled on, tackling her legs, and she hit the ground, glass biting into her back. "Stupid move, girl," Polk hissed, pinning her as Keller cuffed her wrists, tighter than ever, metal cutting flesh. Harrove stepped in, his bulk filling the doorway, a smirk twisting his lips. "Tough little rat, huh? Where's the drive?" Tamika spat blood at his feet, glaring. "Gone. You'll never find it." He crouched, his pale eyes boring into her. "Oh, we'll make you talk. You're headed somewhere special." Was this a bluff or worse? They dragged her outside, her calf bleeding, her arm limp, and tossed her into a van, its interior cold and bare. The militia piled in, rifles clattering, and Harrove climbed up front, his voice low to the driver. Black sight now. The engine roared, the warehouse fading as they sped into the night, the river's glint lost behind trees. Tamika's head throbbed, her body a map of pain, but she clung to defiance. Keller sat across, cracking his knuckles. "You're gonna love this. Place no rules, just us." Polk leaned in, his breath sour. "Confess to Jarvis and maybe we go easy." "Maybe." She glared, voice raw. "I'll die first." The van hit a dirt road, bouncing hard, and stopped at a concrete bunker, its doors rusted but thick, a hole off the grid. They hauled her inside, down a stairwell reeking of damp, and into a cell, its walls stained with old blood. Harrove loomed over her, his badge glinting mockingly. "Welcome home. You've got one chance. Tell us where the drive is, or we break you." She met his stare, her resolve steel despite the fear. "You're the killers, not me. Jarvis deserved better." He smirked, nodding to Keller. "Start with her fingers." Keller grabbed her hand, a pliers in his grip, but she twisted, kicking, his shin buying a second of defiance. Could she hold out? They tied her to a chair, the ropes biting her wrists, and Polk cracked his neck, eager. "You'll sing, princess, everyone does." Harrove watched, arms crossed, his calm a mask for the storm he'd unleash. Tamika's mind raced, the hard drive hidden, her only hope if someone found it. Diaz's death, Jarvis's blood, Lena's knife, all piled on her. But she wouldn't bend. Not yet. She braced for the pain, knowing this was Hargrove's endgame, a place where screams didn't echo beyond the walls, and her fight hung by a thread. Drop a comment with the number 1 if you think Tamika's tougher than they realize. Hit like if you're stunned by Hargrove's cruelty, and subscribe because this showdown's hitting fever pitch. Could you stay silent under that pressure? Imagine her next play. Is there any way out of this hellhole? Keep watching to see if she breaks, or if Hargroves overplayed his hand at last. Tamika Lawrence sat strapped to the chair in the black site cell, the ropes cutting into her wrists, her body a tapestry of bruises and blood. Keller loomed over her, pliers glinting in his meaty hand, while Polk paced, his boots scuffing the stained concrete. Hargrove stood by the door, his bald head catching the dim bulb's glow, his smirk a silent promise of pain. The hard drive was hidden back at the warehouse, her last card, but they didn't know that. Could she outlast this? Keller gripped, her finger, the cold metal biting and twisted, a jolt of agony ripping through her. She bit her lip, tasting copper, refusing to scream, but her mind screamed louder. She couldn't take much more. She needed to play fast, or they'd break her into pieces. "Tell us where the drive is," Hargrove rumbled, stepping closer, his voice calm but edged with steel. "You've got no friends left, Lawrence. Diaz is dead, your little tape's gone. Confess, and we'll ship you to county nice and easy." Tamika's eyes flicked to him, her calf throbbing from the graze, her arm limp from Keller's wrenching. She'd memorized the footage, could testify if she escaped, but escape felt like a dream down here. Could she fake it? She slumped, letting her head loll, her voice hoarse. "Okay, you win. I'll sign whatever you want." Keller paused, pliers hovering, and Polk chuckled, a dry rasp. "Smart girl, knew you'd crack." Hargrove nodded, pulling a confession from his jacket, a pre-typed lie, pinning Jarvis's murder and the arson on her. "Good choice. Sign it. And we're done." Tamika's hand shook as she took the pen, her mind racing behind the mask of defeat. She needed time, a crack in their armor, and this might buy it. She scrawled her name, the ink smudging under her sweaty palm, and Hargrove snatched it back, grinning. "Pleasure doing business." He turned to Keller. "Clean her up, courts tomorrow." Could this really work? She kept her head down, playing broken, as Polk untied her, his grip rough but lazy, assuming she'd folded. They dragged her to a sink, splashing water on her face, the cold stinging her cuts but clearing her head. She caught her reflection in a cracked mirror. Swollen jaw, split lip, eyes wild but sharp. She wasn't done, not yet. Back in the cell, she curled on the cot, feigning exhaustion, while her mind churned. She'd passed a janitor on the way, an older black man with tired eyes mopping the hall. Could he be her out? She'd slipped a folded napkin into his cart, a coded plea scrawled in blood from her lip. "Ledger at warehouse, floorboard, east room. Leak it." It was a long shot, but she'd seen a flicker of recognition in his gaze, a spark of something unbroken. Hours crawled by, the bunker's silence heavy, broken only by Polk's snores from the hall. She waited, her body aching, until a faint clatter sounded, the janitor's cart rolling past. He didn't look at her, but the napkin was gone and her pulse spiked. Had he understood? Morning came, grey light seeping through a slit window, and Keller hauled her up, cuffing her wrists. "Showtime, princess. Court's gonna love your story." They shoved her into a van, Hargrove up front, and rolled toward downtown Atlanta, the city waking under a bruised sky. Tamika kept her face blank, her fake surrender a shield, praying the janitor had moved fast. The arraignment loomed, a packed courthouse buzzing with reporters, their cameras flashing as she stumbled in, shackled and battered. Hargrove had spun her confession on TV overnight, a smug presser claiming victory. Tamika Lawrence, cop killer, caught and cowed. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, banged her gavel, silencing the room, and the prosecutor read the charges: murder, arson, theft, a litany of lies. Tamika stood, head bowed, letting them think she'd crumbled. Could her gamble pay off? She glanced at the gallery, packed with faces, some jeering, some curious, but no sign of help. The judge asked for her plea, and she rasped, "Guilty," her voice a hollow echo buying time. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, the prosecutor smirking, but then the doors burst open, a roar of voices flooding in. Activists stormed the hall, 20 strong, led by a woman with a megaphone, her dreads swinging as she shouted, "We've got the truth." They waved USB sticks, duplicates of the hard drive, its footage blasting from phones. Keller taking cash, Polk snarling slurs, Hargrove's initials on every payoff. Tamika's heart leapt. The janitor had delivered, multiplied her play beyond her wildest hope. How had he pulled it off? The judge pounded her gavel, demanding order, but the room erupted, reporters scrambling, the prosecutor paling as the evidence spread like wildfire. Harrove shot to his feet, his calm, shattering face red with rage. "She orchestrated this. She's a terrorist." He jabbed a finger at Tamika, his voice booming over the chaos, but the activists pressed forward, shoving screens at the bench. The judge snatched one, her eyes narrowing as she watched, Keller's sneer filling the frame. "What is this?" she snapped, glaring at Harrove. Tamika seized the moment, lifting her head, her voice cutting through. "That's the real story. They framed me, killed Jarvis, torched my friend. I'm no murderer." The gallery gasped, cameras swiveling, but Harrove lunged toward her, halted by bailiffs, his fury a caged beast. Had she turned it? The judge ordered silence, her gavel a thunderclap, and called a recess, demanding the footage be verified. Tamika's cuffs clinked as they led her to a holding room, her fake surrender now a spark igniting chaos. She'd bought time, flipped their script, but Harrove wasn't done. He stormed in minutes later, flanked by Keller and Polk, his badge gleaming like a threat. "You think this saves you?" he hissed, leaning close, his breath hot on her face. "Those sticks won't hold up. You're still mine." Keller cracked his knuckles, Polk smirking, and Harrove nodded to the guards. Solitary now, no visitors, no calls. Could he bury this too? They dragged her to a basement cell, a steel box with no windows, the door slamming shut like a tomb. She sank to the floor, the cold seeping into her bones, her victory teetering, on a knife's edge. The activists had the drive, the truth was out, but Hargrove's counterpunch was swift, isolating her, choking her momentum. She'd seen his eyes, the rage promising worse to come. How had he stayed so calm before? She traced the wall's cracks, her mind racing despite the pain. The janitor's move had blindsided them, but Hargrove's power ran deep, a machine she'd only dented. She'd faked surrender, sparked a riot, yet here she was, locked tighter than ever, the stakes soaring to a breaking point. Her calf bled through her jeans, her arm hung useless, but her spirit flickered, refusing to die. The footage was loose, a wildfire she'd lit, and someone out there would fan it. She'd bought a chance, slim as it was, and she'd cling to it even in this hole. Harrove thought he'd won, silencing her here, but she'd planted a seed and it was growing, loud and wild beyond these walls. She closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling, and vowed to endure, to fight when the next door opened, whenever that might be. But as she drifted, a faint clang echoed, a guard's voice muttering about orders, and she knew Hargrove's next play was already rolling, a shadow she couldn't yet see. Tamika Lawrence shuffled into the Atlanta courtroom, her shackles clanking, her body a roadmap of pain from Hargrove's black site hellhole. The civil trial for her $1 million lawsuit against the precinct loomed, a last stand after weeks. In solitary, her fake surrender and the activists' USB leak still rippling through the city. She'd been dragged from that steel box at dawn, her calf crusted with blood, her arm throbbing but her eyes burned sharp, scanning the packed gallery. Reporters jostled, cameras hummed, and protesters' chants seeped through the walls. Justice! For Tamika. Could this be her moment? The judge, a wiry man with a hawkish stare, banged his gavel, silencing the buzz, and she stood, facing a jury primed to hate her. Harrove sat with his legal team, his badge polished to a gleam, his smirk a quiet taunt. Keller and Polk flanked him, uniforms crisp, their grins daring her to swing. The city's attorney, a slick woman in a grey suit, opened with a barrage, piling fabricated evidence. Doctored footage of Tamika stealing, the signed confession. From the bunker, witness statements claiming she'd torched Jamal's house. "She's a violent fraud," the attorney declared, flashing Jarvis's murder scene, his bloodied face a gut punch. Tamika's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms. How could they twist his death like this? The jury shifted, eyes narrowing, swallowing the lies whole. Keller took the stand, his voice oily with fake grit. "She attacked me at Brew Haven, resisted arrest. I feared for my life." He rubbed his jaw, playing victim, and Polk nodded from the bench, a rehearsed tag team. Tamika's blood boiled. She'd never touched him there, only dodged his fists. Could they really sell this? The attorney paraded more, phone records tying her to the arson, a knife found at her motel with Jarvis's blood. Her public defender, a jittery guy with a cheap tie, fumbled objections, drowned by the judge's curt rulings. She felt the noose tightening, Hargrove's empire flexing its muscle, her hope fading under their avalanche of deceit. Then she stood, her shackles rattling, her voice raw but steady. "Enough, I'm not who they say." The room hushed, the judge's gavel pausing mid-air. "I'm Tamika Lawrence, federal agent, badge number 7294, undercover for 18 months to bust your corruption." Gasps erupted, the gallery buzzing, but Hargrove's smirk didn't flinch, his eyes cold as steel. She pressed on, her words a blade. "They extorted black businesses, killed Jarvis, framed me. That hard drive, it's real. Check my mission logs, FBI Atlanta." The judge leaned forward, brow furrowed. "Proof, Ms. Lawrence, now." She swallowed, her throat dry. "Files at my drop point, Delta. They torched them, but the footage aired. You saw it." The attorney leapt up, voice shrill. "She's lying. No badge, no logs, just a desperate con." Hargrove nodded, calm as ever, while Keller snorted loud enough to draw glares. The jury whispered, doubt flickering, and Tamika's stomach sank. Had she played her card too soon? The judge rapped his gavel, demanding order, and turned to her. "Substantiate this or it's stricken." She opened her mouth, the weight of her missing files crushing her, when the doors slammed open, a gust of chaos sweeping in. Officer Tate, a wiry cop with a limp, burst through, his uniform rumpled, a laptop under his arm. "Wait!" he shouted, breathless. "I've got it!" The room froze, every eye on Tate as he stumbled to the bench, his hands shaking. "I worked evidence, saw the hard drive before they yanked it, backed it up." He flipped the laptop open, the screen flaring to life with unedited footage. Keller pocketing cash at Brew Haven, Polk beating a vendor, Hargrove's voice on a call approving a hit. Tamika's breath caught. Was this real? The judge snatched the device, his jaw tightening. As he watched, the audio crackling through the silence. "Take out Jarvis, pin it on her." The gallery erupted, shouts drowning the attorney's objections, and Hargrove lunged from his seat, his calm shattering. "He's a liar. That's fake." Bailiffs grabbed him, pinning his arms as he thrashed, his badge clattering to the floor. Tamika stared, her pulse racing, relief warring with shock. Tate, a nobody cop she'd barely noticed, had just flipped the game. How had he held on to this? The judge pounded his gavel, face red, and ordered the footage played full screen, a projector, whirring to life. Keller's sneer filled the wall, Polk's slurs echoing, Hargrove's initials glowing on a ledger line. The jury gasped, some covering mouths, others glaring at the defendants. The attorney stammered, "This is inadmissible, tampered evidence." But Tate cut in, voice firm. "Chain of custody's clean. I logged it myself, hid it when they started scrubbing." The judge's eyes narrowed, turning to Hargrove. "Explain this, Captain." Hargrove's face twisted, rage breaking through his mask. "She set us up. It's a conspiracy." He shoved a bailiff, reaching for Tamika, but two more tackled him, pinning him to the table. Keller and Polk shrank back, their bravado crumbling. And Tamika stood taller, her shackles a badge of her own now. Could this be the end? The judge called a recess, demanding Tate's laptop be verified, and guards hauled her back to holding, her mind spinning. The footage was out, Hargrove's lies cracking, but he'd fight dirtier now, his power bruised but not broken. She paced. The tiny room, her calf screaming, her hope fragile but alive. Minutes later, the door creaked and a guard muttered, "Back in." She returned, the courtroom thicker with tension, the jury's eyes softer, some nodding her way. Tate sat in the gallery, his limp legs stretched out, a quiet hero she'd never expected. The judge reconvened, his voice grave. "This evidence shifts everything. We'll authenticate it, but if true, we've got a problem." Hargrove's attorney scrambled, piling more lies, but the damage was done, the room tilting in Tamika's favor. She'd revealed her truth, Tate's bombshell backing her up, and Hargrove's lunge had sealed his desperation. Had she finally cracked his armor? The trial stretched, Hours of arguments, the footage looping until the jury's faces hardened with disgust. Harrove glared from his seat, whispering to Keller, Polk fidgeting like a trapped rat. Tamika watched, her body screaming for rest, but her spirit surged. The activist's leak had sparked this. Tate's guts had fueled it. And now the courtroom was her battlefield, her million-dollar claim a beacon for justice. But as closing neared, a clerk slipped the judge a note, his expression darkening. He glanced at Tamika, then Harrove, and she felt a chill. What now? The day ended, no verdict yet, and guards led her out, Hargrove's stare promising vengeance, a storm she knew wasn't over. She sat in holding, the clang of bars her lullaby, replaying Tate's save. He'd risked everything, a whistleblower in a den of wolves, and she owed him her shot. The footage was real, her identity bared, but Hargrove's reach loomed, his counter ready to strike. She'd turned the tide, stunned the court, but solitary, had taught her one truth. He'd never let this stand. Her $1 million hung in the balance, her freedom closer but fragile, and as night fell she braced for the next blow, knowing Hargrove's rage was a beast waking up, hungry for her blood. Tamika Lawrence stood in the courtroom as the jury filed in, their faces grim, the air thick with anticipation. The judge's gavel fell, a sharp crack, and the foreperson rose, voice steady. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Tamika Lawrence, damages awarded, $1 million. A roar erupted, cheers drowning Hargrove's snarl as bailiffs cuffed him, his arrest ordered on the spot for corruption and murder. Tamika's knees buckled, relief flooding her bruised body, her shackles clanking as guards steadied her. Could this be real? Keller and Polk slumped, their bravado shattered, the millionaire hammer smashing their empire. She'd won, her Fed status validated, Tate's footage the knockout blow. But as she exhaled, Hargrove's glare cut through, a promise of hell, and she knew this victory wasn't the end. Guards escorted her out, the gallery chanting her name, reporters swarming, but Harrove vanished into custody, his bald head disappearing down a hall. She was free, the lawsuit hers, and she stumbled into the night, the Atlanta skyline glowing under a crescent moon. She crashed at a safe house, a Fed-rented apartment downtown, her first real bed in weeks, the million pending but her spirit soaring. Could she finally rest? She showered, the hot water stinging her cuts, and slept, dreaming of Jarvis's smile, Jamal's laugh, a world where justice stuck. But at midnight, a crash jolted her awake, glass shattering in the living room, and her gut twisted. Harrove wasn't done. He'd slipped the leash. She grabbed a kitchen knife, her training snapping awake, and crept to the hall, shadows dancing in the moonlight. A figure loomed, masked and hulking, and she lunged, blade slashing air, but he sidestepped, slamming her against the wall. Pain flared, her knife clattering, and she saw the note pinned to the couch. Drop the case or she dies. A photo fluttered down, her younger sister, Aisha, 16, wide-eyed and gagged, snapped outside their mum's Decatur home. Tamika's blood froze. How had he reached her family? The thug bolted, leaving her gasping, the safe house breached, her win a hollow shell. Harrove had escaped, his vengeance a blade at Aisha's throat. She called her mum, voice shaking, and confirmed the worst. Aisha was gone, snatched hours ago. The back door kicked in. Feds swarmed the scene, promising action, but Tamika knew. Hargrove's game. His private militia a ghost unit beyond their reach. She traced the note's paper, a warehouse receipt, its address smudged. Chattahoochee Industrial. Could she find it? She slipped out, dodging Fed tails, and hitched to the river's edge, the night cloaking her as she scouted a derelict factory, its smokestacks jagged against the sky. She crept closer, hearing muffled cries, and spotted Aisha through a cracked window tied to a chair, Harrove pacing, a gun in his fist. Tamika's heart pounded, her sister's sobs a dagger in her chest. She counted 5 goons armed with rifles patrolling the rusting hulks of machinery. Could she take them alone? She scavenged a crowbar from a junk pile, her arm still weak but her resolve iron, and slipped inside, the air thick with oil and decay. She moved silent, a shadow among shadows, and took the first guard, a quick strike to his skull, dropping him cold. His rifle clattered and she froze, but the others didn't hear, their chatter masking the sound. She grabbed his pistol, its weight steadying her, and edged closer, Aisha's whimpers guiding her. Hargrove's voice boomed, low and venomous. "Your sister thought she'd ruin me, kid. Now she'll watch you bleed." He pressed the gun to Aisha's temple, her muffled scream piercing Tamika's soul. She crept behind a conveyor belt, taking a second guard, her crowbar cracking his knee, then his jaw, silencing him fast. 2 down, 3 to go, and she moved, her breath shallow, the pistol cocked. Could she save her before he pulled the trigger? She disarmed a third, a chokehold dropping him limp, and stashed his rifle, her hands slick with sweat. Hargrove spun, sensing something, and she ducked, his eyes narrowing in the gloom. She reached Aisha's corner, the last 2 goons pacing nearby, and lunged, pistol whipping one across the face, his nose crunching as he fell. The other swung, a knife flashing, but she dodged, firing a single shot into his thigh, his scream echoing as he crumpled. Hargrove whirled, gun raised, and fired, the bullet grazing Tamika's shoulder, a hot sting knocking her back. She gritted her teeth, returning fire, her shot hitting his arm, his weapon clattering free. "You're dead," he roared, charging her, his bulk a freight train. Could she end this? She sidestepped, driving the crowbar into his gut, then his skull, and he staggered, blood streaming, but kept coming, a beast unbowed. Aisha thrashed, her chair tipping, and Tamika dove, cutting her ropes with the fallen knife, shoving her behind a crate. "Run!" she hissed, but Hargrove grabbed her leg, yanking her down, his fists raining blows, pain exploding across her ribs. She kicked free, scrambling for the pistol, and fired again, the round tearing through his knee. He howled, collapsing, and she stood, panting, Aisha sobbing beside her. Had she won? She hauled her sister up, limping for the exit, Hargrove's curses fading when a crack split the air, a sniper shot grazing her skull, blood blinding her left eye. She fell, vision blurring, as Polk's laugh rang out, his lean frame emerging. "From the dark. You thought he'd go down easy," Polk sneered, rifle aimed, dragging Aisha back by her hair. Tamika clawed the dirt, her head spinning, the pistol lost in the scuffle. Polk kicked her ribs, pain lancing white-hot, and she gasped, her strength draining fast. "Boss said to finish you slow," he said, pressing the barrel to Aisha's head, her screams a knife in Tamika's heart. Hargrove crawled closer, bloodied, but grinning, his voice a rasp. "You lose, Lawrence, everything." She'd rescued Aisha, wounded him, but Polk's shot had flipped it, her triumph snatched by his trigger finger. Could she fight with nothing left? She rolled, dodging Polk's next kick, and grabbed a shard of glass, slashing his calf, blood spurting as he stumbled. Aisha broke free, running blind, and Tamika lunged, tackling Polk, her fists pounding his face, rage fueling her fading strength. He bucked her off, rifle swinging, but she ducked, glass slicing his wrist, disarming him. Hargrove roared, dragging himself up, and swung a pipe, cracking her spine, her legs buckling. She hit the ground, Aisha's cries distant, Polk towering. Over her, his laugh a death knell. "Night-night," he said, raising the rifle, but sirens wailed, feds breaching the factory, their shouts a chaotic blur. "Too late!" Polk bolted, dragging Aisha into the shadows, and Hargrove collapsed, his breath ragged, his eyes promising more. Tamika lay there, blood pooling, her vision tunneling, the feds' boots storming past. She'd saved Aisha for a moment, struck Hargrove down, but Polk's escape stole her win, her sister's fate a claw in her chest. The $1 million, the trial, all teetered, her body broken, her fight hanging by a thread as medics swarmed, their voices fading into black. She'd pushed back, defied their worst, but Hargrove's vicious retribution had landed, a brutal twist leaving her bleeding, Aisha gone, and the war far from won. Tamika Lawrence woke to the beep of machines, her body a wreck of bandages and pain, the hospital room sterile and cold. Her head throbbed where Polk's sniper shot had grazed her skull, her ribs ached from Hargrove's pipe, and her shoulder burned from his bullet. She'd fought them off in the factory, saved Aisha for a fleeting moment, only to watch Polk drag her sister away as feds stormed in too late. The $1 million verdict felt like ash now, frozen by the city, her victory hollow with Aisha gone. Could she even move? She shifted, wincing, and saw cuffs chaining her to the bed, a guard outside her door, his radio crackling. Then the TV flared, a news anchor's voice slicing through. Tamika Lawrence, cleared agent, now prime suspect in sister's murder. Her blood ran cold, the screen flashing Aisha's photo, her lifeless body staged in a ditch, throat cut. Time stamped hours ago. Tamika's scream choked in her throat, grief and rage crashing over her like a tidal wave. Polk had done this, finished Hargrove's vengeance while she lay here, helpless. The anchor droned on. Captain Hargrove, injured in a raid, claims Lawrence orchestrated the killing to frame him. She stared, numb, as Hargrove's face appeared, bandaged but smug, free on a stretcher, spinning lies from a hospital bed 2 floors down. How had he flipped this again? She yanked at the cuffs, her wrist bleeding, but the guard didn't flinch, his eyes blank. A nurse slipped in, checking her IV, and Tamika rasped, "Get me out! They're lying!" The nurse shook her head, voice low. "You're locked tight. Horn murder Erupts back." Tamika's mind raced, piecing it together. Polk's escape, Aisha's blood. Hargrove's play to bury her deeper. She'd won the trial, exposed them, but they'd countered with her sister's corpse, a brutal checkmate. Could she prove it? Her hard drive was out, Tate's footage viral, yet here she was, caged, the city swallowing their new narrative. She sank back, despair clawing, when a shadow moved outside. Officer Tate's limp silhouette passing the guard with a nod. He slipped in, shutting the door, his face pale but fierce, a burner phone in his hand. "Tamika, listen fast," he whispered, uncuffing her with a stolen key. "They're pinning Aisha on you, but I've got something." He pressed the phone into her palm, its screen glowing with an audio file, Diaz's voice crackling through. "Hargrove's framing her, Jarvis, the kid, all me. He's got Polk moving now." A dying confession recorded as Diaz bled out in the sedan, hidden by Tate until this moment. How had he saved this? She stared, tears burning. Her sister's death a fresh wound, but this was dynamite, a final twist to end them. Diaz rigged his watch, Tate said, voice urgent. "Caught Hargrove's call before they hit you. I've been dodging their goons to get here." Tamika gripped the phone, her strength flickering back, rage fueling her through the haze. "Where's Polk?" she croaked, and Tate's jaw tightened. "Hold up Precinct's blind spot. Feds are raiding Hargrove's crew now, but he's slipping through." She nodded, sliding off the bed, her legs shaky but holding, the IV ripped free, blood dripping. Could she finish this? She stumbled to the window, cracking it, the night air sharp as Tate braced her. "Broadcast it," she said, handing him the phone. "Everywhere." He hesitated, then bolted, promising to hit every outlet, his limp fading. Down the hall. Tamika climbed out, dropping 6 feet to a dumpster, pain exploding as she hit, but she ran, her hospital gown flapping, bare feet slapping pavement. She hit a payphone 2 blocks out, breathless, and called a Fed hotline. Voice, raw. "Agent Lawrence, 7294. Audio drop now, Hargrove's confession. Move." She hung up, staggering to a bench, blood seeping through her bandages, and waited, the city's pulse pounding around her. Could it spread fast enough? Minutes later, horns blared, TVs in shop windows flickered, Diaz's voice booming. Hargrove's, framing her. All me. Crowds froze, phones lit up and sirens wailed, louder, closer. Tamika watched, trembling, as news cut to Hargrove's hospital room, Feds storming in, his smirk gone, cuffs snapping on his wrists. "No!" he roared, thrashing, but they dragged him out, his empire crashing live. Polk's face flashed next, nabbed in a raid, his rifle confiscated, Aisha's blood still on his hands. Riots sparked outside the precinct, chants of justice, shaking the streets. A city waking to the truth she'd bled for. Had she done it? She slumped, her vision blurring. The bench her anchor as medics found her. Their hands gentle this time, no cuffs, just stretcher straps. Back in the hospital, Feds swarmed, not to arrest but to guard, their voices hushed with awe. "You're clear, Lawrence. Hargrove's done. Polk too." She nodded, numb, Aisha's loss of void swallowing her win. The million unfroze, hers now, but it couldn't buy back her sister, couldn't erase the scars. Could she live with this? Tate slipped, In, his eyes soft, handing her a coffee. Toyo flipped it, Tamika. Diaz's last shot. She sipped, the heat grounding her, and stared out. Atlanta's skyline a jagged promise. Harrove faced trial, gunned down days later by a rogue cop he'd burned, his blood pooling on a jail floor. A grim echo of Jarvis. Polk got life. His smirk wiped clean, the precinct gutted by feds, a dozen badges stripped. Tamika healed slow, her body mending, her soul fractured. Aisha's funeral a quiet ache she'd carry forever. She moved south, the million funding a bakery in Savannah, a tribute to her sister's dream, its sign reading, Aisha's Light. Could she rebuild? Customers came, drawn by her story, her resilience a beacon in a city scarred but stirring. She baked, her hands steady, the oven's warmth a balm. But nights brought nightmares, Polk's laugh, Hargrove's pipe, Aisha's cries. Therapy stitched her back, piece by piece, and the community rallied, their solidarity a shield. The feds offered her a desk, but she declined, her fight done, her badge retired. Could she find peace? She stood at Aisha's grave, the wind soft, and whispered, "I got 'em, sis," tears falling free. Savannah grew around her, the bakery thriving, a quiet triumph over the chaos she'd survived. Her reversal had shocked the world, Diaz's audio a lightning bolt shattering Hargrove's. Webb, her sacrifice igniting a reckoning. Atlanta cleaned house, new laws curbed corruption. Her name a whisper on the streets, a legend born from blood and grit. She'd lost everything, sister, safety, innocence, but gained something fiercer. A voice that roared when silenced, a truth that burned through lies. Could she carry on? She locked the bakery one night, the stars bright, and walked home, her limp fading, her spirit unbroken, a woman who'd faced the abyss and clawed her way back, leaving Hargrove's ruin in her wake. Tamika Lawrence's journey in Black Woman stands up to corrupt racist cops. Court freezes. When she reveals who she is, $1 million lawsuit offers raw, unflinching lessons about resilience, justice, and the cost of fighting systemic evil. First, it shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to push through it. Tamika faced racist threats, betrayal, and physical torment, yet she never stopped, turning every setback into a spark for her next move. Her story proves that one voice, even battered and bleeding, can ignite change when it refuses to break. Second, it exposes the brutal reality of power. Corrupt systems like Hargrove's thrive on silence and fear, but crumble under relentless truth. Tamika's persistence, from sneaking evidence to broadcasting Diaz's dying words, shattered their grip, teaching us that exposure is a weapon sharper than fists. Third, it underscores the personal toll of justice. Losing Aisha carved, a permanent scar, a reminder that victory can taste bitter when it costs those you love. Finally, it highlights community strength. From Tate's whistleblowing to strangers amplifying her fight, collective support turned her lone battle into a citywide reckoning. This isn't just Tamika's win, it's a blueprint for anyone facing injustice. Dig deep, find allies, and never let the bastards grind you down. So what would you sacrifice to stand against corruption? Drop a comment if you think Tamika's fight was worth the price, hit like if her grit inspires you, and subscribe for more stories of unbreakable spirits. Share this if you believe one person can shift the world. Thanks for joining this wild ride. Here's to resilience and justice lighting your path forward.